with the last two chapters of The Secret Chicken Society. Daniel found out that Peepers was a rooster, and those are not only illegal in the city limits, but also his mom and dad said you couldn't have them, that rooster. So he did a little bit of internet research and discovered that roosters only crow in the mornings, or when they feel kind of threatened, I think it is. So he decided that he's going to make the hen house into something that's a little bit better insulated, and it's going to have plastic black trash bags in there so that it's dark all the time. So we left off with chapter 11 called Jailbird. One day, about 2 weeks later, the weather turned hot. Daniel checked his pets. Jasper drank noisily from his bottle. Speedy panted in his cage. Mr. Feathers fluffed out his feathers and closed his eyes. The guppies were the only ones staying cool. They swam comfortably around in their tank, looking happy. The SCS members, the Secret Chicken Society members, sat in the treehouse. At least Daniel and Kelsey did. Emmy sat on the grass. Tyler was at a ball game. Not a breeze stirred the leaves on the trees. Bees buzzed in the gardens. The chickens rested in the shade, not making much noise. It is hot, too hot to do anything, said Kelsey. Too hot to think, said Daniel. He rubbed the sweat off of his forehead. Too hot to pink, said Emmy. She peeled the petals off a daisy and flung them into the air. Too hot to stink, said Daniel, and they all laughed. Can we have ice pops? Emmy called to Dad. He was working on his laptop on the back porch. He nodded. Bring me an orange one, he said. Can we run through the sprinkler? Asked Kelsey. Sure, but set it up in the front yard. That grass could use some water anyways. They went outside the gate to the front yard, dragging the hose and the sprinkler. Daniel didn't see the curious hens follow them out front. The kids put on their swimming suits and ran through the spray. The cold water felt delightful. When they were completely soaked, Emmy brought out the ice packs. They had sat on the hot cement steps, watching the sprinkler make rainbows in the sky. Daniel had raspberry, his favorite. He licked it, and the drips ran down his arms. Look, blood, he told Emmy. Ew, she said. She had a blue ice pop. Her lips and tongue were blue. Just then, Dot and Dash, remember the Dalmatians from next door, ran over from next door, yapping. Dash jumped up on Emmy. He licked her face. He knocked the ice pop out of her hand. My ice pop! Bad doggies, cried Emmy. The ice pop lay melting on the sidewalk. The poodles lapped it up. Oh, yeah, they're poodles, not Dalmatians. Dot, called Miss Clay. Dash! She stood on her porch and clapped her hands. The poodles paid no attention to her. They spotted the hens. Yap, 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 they barked. Daniel wasn't sure what happened next because suddenly there was a flurry of feathers. Peepers! He spread his wings and arched his back. He danced up on his toes. The feathers on his neck ruffled. He flapped his wings and he charged. Yip, 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 yip. The poodles ran down the sidewalk like black and white streaks. The rooster chased after them, darting and pecking and squawking at them. Emmy, you left the gate open again, yelled Daniel, running after Peepers. Not me, said Emmy. It's Kelsey's fault. Peepers chased the poodles back into their own yard, but he didn't stop there. He circled the dogs, flapping his wings. Dot whined and Dash growled. My poor babies, wailed Miss Clay. Get that wild animal away. She grabbed her broom, and Kelsey screamed. No, yelled Daniel. He splashed across the wet lawn, slipping a little in the mud. Don't hurt him. He's just protecting his hens. I'll get him. He dived at Peepers and caught him. He settled the still angry rooster on his arm and carried him home. Dad stood on the front steps. What's going on, he asked. I heard a noise. His eyes widened when he saw Peepers. She's a rooster, he exclaimed. Then he looked at Daniel. Son, we need to talk. Miss Clay had called the police to complain. After the police left, Dad had a long talk with the Secret Chicken Society, even Tyler. It was wrong of you to keep Peepers a secret, Dad told him. We're sorry, said Daniel. Are we grounded? I think this is punishment enough, said Dad. He put his hand on Daniel's shoulders. The police have given us just 14 days to find another home for Peepers. Daniel tried to talk his parents into letting him keep the Bantee rooster, but it was no use. We can't break the law, son. Besides, said Mom kindly, this isn't the best place for a rooster. He needs a new home. So Daniel put posters up around town. Free to go home, nice rooster. We'll keep your garden free of slugs and snails, is what the sign said. He called friends and relatives. He advertised in the newspaper. He even called Mrs. Lopez. Maybe she would like to have peepers for her classroom pet in the fall. But no one wanted a rooster. All too soon, the 14 days were up. The whole family watched as the 2 police officers pulled up in the police car. The tall one got out carrying a cage. For peepers. He's going to be a jailbird, Daniel thought. He felt Dad's hand on his shoulder. Do you want me to get him or do you want to get him or do you want me to? He asked. No, I'll do it. Emmy held Mom's hand. She was crying. Kelsey's face was red. She cried too. Even Tyler had nothing snarky to say. The whole family and the policeman followed Daniel out back to the chicken coop. Peepers scratched at the dirt looking for bugs. He cocked one eye at Daniel and went back to scratching. He clearly had no idea what was coming. Daniel sat down next to him in the dirt. He stroked his golden brown feathers. I'm going to miss you, he said. Tears pricked his eyes. His vision blurred. He blinked and saw Poison a few feet away, hiding in the bushes, twitching his tail. Daniel's pent-up feelings burst loose. Stupid cat, he yelled. Get out of here. Poison hissed. He sped under the fence. Daniel turned back to Peepers. Well, this ought to make Mr. Gruffalo happy anyhow, he grumbled. He picked up his rooster. He wished Mrs. Gruffalo would say goodbye. At least she liked roosters. Wait a minute, he yelled. Can I make one phone call? They looked at each other. Please? Even the bad guys on TV get one phone call, the stout officer shrugged. Daniel put Peepers back into the chicken run. He grabbed Mom's hand and pulled her into the house. I wonder who that phone call was to. Chapter 12, The Chicken Dance. That afternoon, the whole family went to Willowdale Care Center. Soft music still played. It still smelled like boiled cabbage and cleaning stuff. Remember, this is where Mrs. Gruffalo is staying. Mom and Dad brought blackberries from the garden. Emmy brought more wildflowers. Kelsey brought banana bread, and Tyler, of course, just brought himself because he's a teenager and he doesn't think of anybody else. Mr. Gruffalo was there, too. He stood behind Mrs. G's wheelchair. He bought a cake for Mrs. G's birthday. He looked surprised to see Daniel carrying Peepers. He started to frown, but Mrs. G held out her arms. Daniel handed Peepers to her. She cuddled the rooster, and he fluffed his feathers. He sat in her lap just like a little dog. You brought the rooster, said Mrs. G. She stroked his feathers. I talked to Miss Benton this morning, Daniel told her. She said Peepers can live here now. So here's Mrs. G with the rooster. She said it would be good for all of the people at Willowdale to have a pet rooster to care for and to love. Mrs. G set Peepers on the floor. The other residents came over to see. Peepers strutted around like he owned the place. He puffed out his chest. He fluffed his feathers. He did his funny little shuffle dance. He's doing the chicken dance, said Mrs. G. Her eyes crinkled with laughter. Peepers pranced over to Mr. Gruffalo. He tugged on Mr. G's shoelaces, and everybody laughed. Ah, he thinks it's a worm, laughed Mrs. G. Thank you for bringing him, she said to Daniel. You get to keep Peepers here, said Daniel. He looked warily at Mr. Gruffalo. What would he say? Would he say roosters belong in stew pots? But Mr. Gruffalo was not looking at Daniel. He was watching Mrs. G and smiling. That is the end of The Secret Chicken Society. The quiz number is 150205. 150205. 150205. 150205. That is the last read aloud for the year. Have a great summer.